And welcome back everyone. After looking at WWF games on the Super NES, and for reasons of impartiality, I am taking a look at WWF games on the Megadrive. But I do have a couple of caveats with this video, with the first one being the only WWF game I played in the Megadrive back in the day was Super Wrestlemania, and the rest of these games I only played for the first time very recently. I was also taken aback slightly at the amount of WWF games on the Megadrive, given that WWF games on home console had long been a staple for Nintendo. There are no less than 5 WWF games on the Megadrive, and even that statement might be stretching the truth more than a Sergeant Slaughter Cobra Clutch. You see, WWF games got released on the Mega CD and even the 32X. So let's jump right into it and go back to the beginning. The first entry is Super Wrestlemania, which on the face of it looks pretty close to the Super NES version, but peel back the lycra and you will see that it's a different game. Firstly, the visuals are close, but not quite up to the same level as the Super Nintendo, and the same for the sound, but to be fair, that is to be expected. There is also a different roster for some reason, with some odd choices. There are also only 8 wrestlers to choose from, but there are fewer top tier wrestlers to choose from, if that makes sense. The Super NES version had the Road Warriors and the Natural Disasters. Here, the only tag team is DiBiase and IRS. But the Mega Drive has Papa Shango and the British Bulldog, and neither of which were considered main event stars. But to make up for that, the fan favourite Ultimate Warrior was included. And, on a side note, the timing of this game onto the Mega Drive could not have come at a worse time for this roster, as the Bulldog was given the boot for failing a drugs test, and the Warrior had been shown the door for the second time round about this time. Hulk Hogan was also not around, as he was taking a hiatus to basically help Vince McMahon with his FBI steroid trial. But it's not all bad for this release, and I do have to say, I did prefer this version over the Super NES version, mainly because the game had a proper championship mode, and also because each wrestler had their signature move, although I have completely forgotten how to execute those moves now, which is why you don't really see many in these clips. The controls were also more clunky than the Super NES version. With only 3 buttons, it made grappling and move execution that little bit harder. But overall, I would say that some issues from the SNES version had been rectified, and so this version, in my book, is better than the Super NES one, even with its obvious faults and limitations. So how do the other WWF games fare then? Less than 1 year later, Royal Rumble was released onto the Super NES and Mega Drive at roughly the same time, and again, on the face of it, the two versions appear identical, and the SNES version had the better visuals and sound, even though both had taken a downgrade onto a far larger cartridge. The playability on the SNES was also better this time around. The advantage over the WrestleMania game with the wrestler's signature moves was now gone, and so, if you had both consoles, it came down to a choice of what roster you preferred. as the Megadrive roster had been increased to 12 to match the Super NES version, but the SNES version still had the stronger lineup in my opinion. The Megadrive had the likes of serial mid-carder Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the model Rick Martel and IRS. But the SNES one had Ric Flair, Mr. Perfect and Yokozuna. The expansion of the roster to 12 kind of had to happen as well, as if the roster remained at 8, the Royal Rumble would have been pretty short. So the playability in this one is almost a carbon copy of Super Wrestlemania. I say almost a carbon copy, as for some reason, and I don't know if it's down to emulation, the controls felt even worse in this version. They felt pretty unresponsive, and again, with only 3 buttons on a Megadrive controller compared to the 6 on the Super NES, move execution was always going to be tight. I wouldn't say the Megadrive version is a million miles off from the Super NES version, but in my opinion, the SNES version was just better in each department. But with the Mega CD offering CD quality sound and way more data storage capacity, would a version on that improve the sound and visuals? In the same year as the release of the Royal Rumble onto the 16-bit consoles, Sculptured Software released Rage in a Cage onto the Mega CD. The main theme of this game was the inclusion of the steel cage match, and it sported the big blue cage that was kind of iconic back in the 80s. It's certainly how I remembered the steel cages back then. The roster had been ramped up as well to 20 wrestlers, but again, there was a lack of real top tier talent. But I guess this was more an issue caused by the WWF at the time and not the game developer. We got some odd choices again. In this game, we have the Big Boss Man and the Nasty Boys, and I think all of them had left the WWF at the time of this game's release. We then have the Head Shrinkers and Money Incorporated, and so for the first time ever, we have 3 tag teams to choose from. The digitised images of the wrestlers haven't improved, and neither have any of the rest of the visuals, and so that is very disappointing indeed. But the sound has improved, and now some of the wrestlers have their entrance themes in glorious CD quality sound, but plenty others don't. So that was a little weird. Oh, and you can also view some incredibly grainy footage of each wrestler's signature move. The controls are still pretty awkward, but it's not like the Mega CD was ever going to correct that now. And that's the other thing. The Mega CD was a £300 add-on still at this time, and the massive leap forward was just not evident in any of the games released so far for it. But if you simply had to have a bigger roster and some CD quality themes and sound bites, then by all means play this one. But there are still more WWF games to cover off in this video. this release, the roster for the SNES and Mega Drive versions were the same, and again, it's the first time there is a female in there, but again, this roster selection lacked some top tier talent. There are new faces like Diesel and Doink the Clown, but I guess again, the poor roster was a result of the talent in the WWF at the time, and not the developer's problem. The game modes are still there, and we have the new Bedlam mode, and it actually plays a bit better than Royal Rumble on the Mega Drive. Again, I don't know if it's an emulation thing, but the 6-button pad was a thing now for the Mega Drive, and this game seemed to utilise it. Well, at least it did on emulation when I was playing it, and so now it's all equal, right? Well, no. The sound and the visuals are massively below those that are on the Super NES version, and it's quite obvious for all to see. But this isn't the end of WWF Raw on the Mega Drive. You see, a version got released onto Sega's mushroom topping add-on, the 32X. So surely the visuals in that would be better than the SNES version. When I fired this up, I have to say, I was taken aback over the sharp visuals. They look so much sharper over the Mega Drive and the SNES ones, with an overall different look to this game as well, but with some odd colour schemes. The sound as well was much improved, with each wrestler's entrance music that bit clearer as well. So it was off to a good start, and then the disappointment set in. With this being on the 32X, I had expected a larger roster, but there are still only 12 wrestlers to choose from. What the heck? So after shelling out big bucks for a 32X and for a copy of this game, the only improvement was better visuals and sound? What a joke. Playability wise, it wasn't any different from Raw on the Mega Drive. So why would Sega think anyone would buy this version over the Mega Drive version? But even saying all of that, WWF Raw is still the best WWF game on the 16-bit consoles, and I still enjoyed playing this on the 32X, even if I was getting a little bit fatigued by it all. But what version did I prefer, the SNES or the 32X? Well, that's easy. I preferred the SNES version. I bought that version and still have my copy of it in a sealed box. It was a game not from my childhood days, but from my carefree days as a young adult, but it still holds a lot of nostalgia for me, and that's pretty much the reason why I prefer that version. But overall, if you want to play a WWF game on old Sega consoles, you are pretty much spoiled for choice. My recommendation would be for WWF Raw on the Mega Drive, but the others are actually worth a look too. And that was my look at WWF games on the Mega Drive. If you like this video, then please do the usual like, comment and subscribe malarkey. And a massive thank you as always to everyone who has subscribed and commented already. And that's all from me, folks. Thanks for watching.
Ah!